able to figure out through the process of dialogue and me modeling how the teaching goes, whether this is what you want to be doing or what you don't want to be doing for 10 weeks. And if you don't, you can get the hell out, because it doesn't get any better or worse. Right? At the end of the day is I try to give people 15, 20, 25, 35 minutes of modeling how the teaching goes. I do a little break, and then a bunch of people leave and they wander around, and then some people stick around and other people don't come back. And it doesn't matter to me because I don't get paid by the student.
And one guy wanted to commit suicide.
What's that? Oh yeah, and one guy killed himself. He's gone. No joke. Where is it? I did see that guy. He's in an international business class. I was like, oh, thank God you're alive. I thought you were dead. So this class is okay. So I got a copy of the syllabus. If you are on Canvas, you can get a copy of the syllabus yourself up as well. I've learned through through experience that it's best nowadays to do something very traditional, which is walk through the syllabus a little on the first day, and do this other thing where I give you an instructor appeal to authority, where I explain why you should listen to me because I'm really important and stuff. But I found that if I don't do that, it ends up creating massive amounts of anxiety and confusion in some students, so I have to do it, otherwise they cry a lot and then I have to deal with it. The class is business, actually it's called venture planning. Is that what we're calling it? Is that right? Okay. So the course introduces the theory and the practice of venture planning, or as I'm going to make a case in the first little bit of class, the difference between business planning and business discovery. And I'm going to argue in a very short period of time that that's a distinction that has an important difference. I always like to start the class with my favorite philosopher, Mike Tyson, who captures the essence, I think, in the 30 minutes of whatever I'm going to say about business planning or venture planning or whatever case I'm going to be making. Right? At the end of the day, everyone has a plan, right? And then they get punched in the face, metaphorically speaking, and they have to adapt to the plan. And so we're coming to grips with the fact of how are we going to think about entrepreneurial ventures given the context and ambiguity that we start businesses with. So what's the course objective for those of you who haven't had a chance to look at the syllabus? The goal is to guide the class as a whole through the experience of the venture planning process, and in so doing, give you the skills and the confidence to be able to do this at will whenever you want. So the words on this slide, the objectives, are chosen very carefully as a guide. What that implies is, although I may be doing some lecturing occasionally, by and large the class is me guiding you through this. One of the underlying premises of my teaching, approach to teaching, one of my underlying premises is approach to how I handle the classroom in general, is that resident inside the classroom is all of the knowledge, skills, and experience necessary to get where we wanted to go and satisfy our learning objectives, irrespective of whether I was present or not. And I don't say that as a trope. I mean that very seriously. So the world in which we are educating MBA students has changed from when I got my MBA, and it's changed from, which was like 1997. And I got my MBA in 1997. I graduated from college in 1992. And in both of those contexts, one could argue when I was an undergraduate that I was a diaper baby and I didn't know anything, because at that time, my job, the job I had was like a fast food job. You ever seen the Beavis and Butthead sort of Burger World thing where you're like dropping some stuff onto a taco and giving it out the drive-thru? That's the kind of work that I did through college. And then when I became a MBA student, I didn't really have a great deal of business experience. What's changed in the past decade is that all of you have had, I'm guessing, most of you have had serious jobs for reals already. Many of you have 7 to 10 years experience doing things for reals, which is different than how I grew up. And not only that, most of you have, as a professional, what's the MBA, PMBA split here? PMBA, how many? Right? Okay, so you guys as PMBAs, you even have lives, right? You have, in many cases, families. Some of you have like children's, many of you have many children's. Right? I don't have any of those things. I'm sort of like, I don't have any of that stuff still. And so as a result, what I'm trying to communicate is that most, if not all, of what is needed to be known in the classroom is already embedded in the skills and experience of the people here. Our job is to get in dialogue about that in order to figure that out. One of the challenges that we face is that the entire model of the classroom is designed to put eyes forward on me and creates the underlying model, which is institutionally reinforced, that somehow I am in charge and I have something to say and you have something to listen to. And that just doesn't work. So we're going to have to figure out how to get out of that world. And one of the main things I can do at the beginning is just to let you know what kind of classroom you're about to experience, which is one in which, unlike your other classrooms, you are actually responsible for the content you're learning in this class, for reals. So that's the downside, right? The upside is like every complaint that you have about your MBA program, about how it's not action-oriented and how there's so much latent energy in the classroom and the instructor doesn't capitalize on it. And Scott knows more about operations management than the operations management guy does about something. Or where are you working right now?
Me?
Yeah.
3.5.
Yeah. Okay, so you're working at Swarm Builder, right? So what am I going to tell you about SEO and community building that you don't already know or can't figure out and should be able to tell the class, right? These are the things I'm talking about, right? So my job is to draw all that stuff out and get it communicated. The downside is that's what I do, is draw that stuff out and get it communicated. I can have and will someday continue to do transmission-based lectures. I just find it both insulting to the participants to do so, especially you guys, because you have a ton of experience. I also find it tedious, right? And fundamentally, I find it an imperfect mechanism through which we examine this stuff. So I'm going to be a guide. We're going to be engaged in the process of discovering businesses, and the goal is you'll know that we've won the game of the class when you can walk out of the classroom saying, I understand how to discover a business. I have the tools and processes down that I can do it myself. I either have started one or I haven't, but at any point in time I can go do that. So again, underlying that piece of that framework. By the way, if you're wondering whether class has started, it's started. Like class is happening right now. So if you're like waiting for when to like pay attention, like, it happened. Right. Another important piece this is an important thing. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to wander all over the place. So, yeah, how do you want to handle that?
Well, I'm not sure this is working, so I'm doing both.
Oh, that's you can just sit that down and let it audio record. And
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to torture you, and I'll figure this stuff out because I'm going to
Okay.
cruise through it.
So that you can.
We will figure. Someone can figure that out or not. So a core conjecture to the business, which is what I'm going to attempt to communicate tonight, right? I have to make a case for this class. So in order to make a case for this class, I have to make a case about the entrepreneurship phenomenon in general. First of all, I have to make the case that it can be achieved by normal humans, right? One view of the entrepreneurship phenomenon is that entrepreneurs are born rather than made, right? In which case, discovering business is not a skill. It is just something that you can do if you're capable of doing it. I'll give you a simple example. If it were true that there was any correlation between general cognitive capability, and starting a business, then I would start my class a different way, right? I would give you all IQ tests, right? That would be the logical thing to do. And then I would pull you aside and say, hey, Marion, very news for you. Don't quit your day job. Right? It ain't gonna work, right? You just don't have what it takes. Or if entrepreneurship were genetically encoded, right? If you could somehow correlate pieces of your DNA, which people have attempted to do, right? If you could make the case that it was a DNA-driven thing, that you would be more likely rather than less likely to do that. Another solution would be that I just hand you all a cup, right? You spit in it. I say, come back next week. And I go, all right, one side of the class, you're all likely to be business starters. So all of you who are on the other side of the class, who aren't business starters, now have to help them start businesses, right? That would be discovering a business is not a skill. It's just something that's innate to your hardware, and you simply have it or you don't. As it turns out, this is a raging debate in the entrepreneurship literature, and one ought to have come to grips with this. The second is that it can be taught, right? There's no evidence that just because something requires skill, that it can be taught. For example, let me give you one example of something that's a skill that cannot be taught in the classroom: surfing. Surfing cannot be taught in the classroom. I'm guessing there are other things that you're probably thinking about right now that are skills that could not be taught in the classroom. For example, biking. Yeah, it would be very terrible, right? I could just imagine how that would go, right? So I have to also make the case that these skills can be taught. And then also crucially, even if I get away with that, right? I dodge I Heisman the issue of the DNA, then I run over here and I Heisman the issue of teaching, and I'm like, ooh, I'm almost at the end zone. No, there's a free safety who's like he's like 6'12" and like weighs 1 billion pounds, and he's coming at me. And that issue is, maybe it's the case that this thing's a skill, maybe it can indeed be taught, but it cannot be taught in 10 weeks. These are all very logical, conceptual, right? At first principles, you can imagine a set of things that are skillful that can indeed be taught in the classroom. And I have to say, bad news, it actually takes 12.2 weeks to teach you anything about this stuff. So we, my friend, are screwed. We're wasting time, right? So I have to make a case in the first 15, 20, 25 minutes before we take a break. And those of you who are like, can this guy stop? Right? We have to make that case clear. The good news is this class, just to cut to the chase, for those of you who are wondering and actually afraid, business discovery is a skill. It can be taught, and it can be taught in an incredibly short period of time. The class is 10 weeks long. Everything that I need to teach you on business discovery, you'll learn in 2, 3, outside of 5 weeks, do you think? Unfortunately, Gary has sat in various versions of this class that have lasted 16 weeks, 10 weeks, 5 weeks. Basically, after about 2.5 weeks, I'm starting to get stale. There's nothing more I can teach you. There's not a lot to this class. This is actually really good news. Why it's good news is it implies that it's a deeply, deeply democratic process. That the skills that we can teach are things that people who are young can learn, things that people who are old can learn. People who I have for 5 weeks can learn them, people who I have them for 15 weeks can learn them. And that is really cool. And in order to do that, a huge chunk of what we're going to do is going to be on the court, in practice, because after 2 or 3 weeks, I'll have nothing left to say. So if we're not playing basketball, I'm screwed. So let me first make an important case here about entrepreneurship in general, about the phenomenon. Now we're moving into my proof points. First, entrepreneurship is everywhere and utterly commonplace. The stats say that half of you in this room, and even if I scaled up, it would still be half, basically 50% of you, at any given point in your career are going to found a business. You're going to start a small business. You're going to start a consulting company. You're going to start your own tech startup. Yeah?
Is that all for just MBA students in general, or general populace?
That's a great question. It is. That's the general populace. So this reference is from the panel study of entrepreneurial dynamics, which is a random stratified sample from 2003 to 2009 on entrepreneurial activity. And what we discovered, much to our shock and chagrin, is that entrepreneurial activity is utterly bog standard and boring. Everyone does it. So how does that relate to the question of whether or not you're born or made? It's a very simple equation, which is anything that's genetically interesting for only half of the population is just as interesting as gender, which is to say not interesting at all. Right? There's absolutely nothing that prevents any of you from starting your own business. Of the chunk of you that are here, how many are in this room? 20? 4 of you are going to start businesses that are going to employ 2 to 5 people, and you're going to generate more than $1 million in revenue. You're going to be millionaires. And 1 of you, who's not of that 4, is going to produce a growth business that's going to be worth tens of millions of dollars. That's just stats. So I'm just looking at the population and what people are doing. So my view is that makes this class really important because it makes it one of the more interesting classes that you could be taking at the school. I'm also going to be making a case later on in the slides as foreshadowing that, does anyone remember what the stats are on the small business failure rate? I'm sorry?
8%.
Yeah, so thank you. Small business failure rate set between 7, depending on who you ask, the small business failure rate, 7 out of every 10, 8 out of every 10. And in the case of startups that take external private equity financing, like venture capital, that goes up to 9 out of every 10. So, notice when I said that 50% of you will start a business, I did not make any sort of meaningful claim about whether that business would succeed or not. The intention of this class, the reason that I started to create it, the reason that I built the Foundry, the reason that I came to the University of Utah, and the reason that I stopped working and stopped surfing full time and just decided to do something is because I was interested in solving a problem that most people have decided is impossible. and it's a piece of physics, which is the small business failure rate. So that helps to describe what it is that now we're segueing into what I'm about. This is the appeal of authority part. I'm actually not going to do that, but I will tell you that what I care most deeply about is puzzling over this issue of the small business failure rate and how and why we've treated it as a law of gravity. We've just assumed that all small businesses fail. I decided that that wasn't the case. It was just an agreement that we all made up and decided to do something about it. And part of that was coming to the university and teaching entrepreneurship students and MBA students so they can go out and be imprinted and do other stuff. So, and I'll tell you more about what I learned in the 4 years that I've been here. Do you mind if I play a couple videos? So the first piece, right, in our narrative is that entrepreneurship is utterly commonplace. It is completely straightforward. As I mentioned, half of you are going to start businesses, and then of the half, some of you are going to have varying degrees of success. I noted an interesting puzzle, which is that despite the fact that half of you will start businesses, only a small fraction of your businesses will be alive after 2 years. So that's one thing to think about. The second thing I'd like you to think about is that the underlying economics around the starting of businesses has structurally changed. So this is the second point in your notes.
This democratization of innovation, though, has really a few components to it. The first component is what I call the collapsing cost of product building. Now, it's important to note that it's about the collapsing cost of product building and not company building. What are the components of the collapsing cost of product building? Well, for one thing, it's open source software. I remember back in college, some of my friends were talking about starting up a company. They were talking about buying a SQL Server license for $10,000. You don't need to do that anymore. Another really interesting trend is commoditized technology. I know people who are in the film industry who've been making films now on really cheap cameras, and they get 1080p. It's really incredible to see that. Third is crowdsourced infrastructure. Now, a lot of you may have heard of Mechanical Turk, but we're able to actually do things with crowdsourced infrastructure that you couldn't even do with really complex algorithms. An example is, if you want to analyze a piece of video, it's much cheaper to just get a person to take a look at it than to have computers actually analyze it. And that ability to get crowds to actually analyze instead of using computer algorithms is also extraordinarily powerful. The last is cloud computing. Our ability to have elastic computing power as well as the ability to scale rapidly if something hits is huge. You don't need to buy server infrastructure to be able to last your largest inputs. And so as a result of that, we see a collapsing cost in our ability to build products. You can do it really quickly with very few dollars. And in fact, I see my students all the time just taking out their credit card and building a product, rapidly prototyping something and seeing if it works. And this is applicable, again, not only to startups, but even within large companies. And it's having a profound impact on the way new products are built.
Cool. So that video is circa 2010. That was 3 years ago. And it is already out of date. In what ways is it out of date? So she identifies several drivers that are relentlessly driving the cost of starting businesses down, one of which is open source software. She mentioned the technical infrastructure that underlies most businesses, even physical businesses, product businesses, they require software. That software is largely free now. There's technical advances in terms of Moore's law applying to video cameras as she's describing, smaller, cheaper, better. The application of the crowd. Do you guys use or know what Mechanical Turk is? Okay, so it's a useful thing. I would recommend that you become conversant with what Mechanical Turk is. It is a software exchange platform that allows individuals to work with other folks all around the world to do small, high-value tasks, analyzing video, performing surveys, et cetera, et cetera. I even use it for research. So Mechanical Turk is very, very potent because it harnesses the crowd. So you now have an elastic set of human resources that you can access, right? And then the final piece is cloud computing, which is her last piece and the one she doesn't talk about very much because we saw that at the beginning of the cloud services, but here we are in 2013, and most of the back-end infrastructure that drive interesting internet-based software businesses is all using Amazon's underlying architecture, underlying Elastic Cloud architecture. So did I just speak a bunch of gibberish to you? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Alright. So, and this thing's woefully out of date. So why? What is missing from this list?
One thing, manufacturing now is even becoming cheaper.
Why?
Look, the Alibaba, all the access to these Chinese manufacturers now. I mean, after the foundations class, I was looking at them. You can actually model a new physical thing, and they can send you the prototype.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not only software. I mean, software, yes, we get it, that you can scale it, but now even physical stuff can be done.
And this is the point I would very much like to emphasize early on in the class, is that those examples, especially because they're coming out of Stanford, where a lot of folks are building web-based businesses, you'll tend to think about them entirely as from high-growth web-based businesses. And I'm making a particular claim for this class, which is it applies to physical businesses as well, and most importantly, applies to not just high-growth businesses, but lifestyle businesses and small businesses. Let me explain why this is important. Because for those of you who aren't interested in building the next Amazon, right, you might think to yourself, why am I in this class and why is this important? It is important for a couple of reasons. The first, easiest application of the entrepreneurship setting is that if my conjecture is true, that the collapsing cost of product building bleeds over into physical goods, it means that you're able now to build things like watches or shoes or pants or all the other physical goods things that you want to build or dream of building cheaper than you could before. The second thing that you might consider, which no one frankly is talking about, is what happens when you harness all of this interesting innovative technology to a small business. Actually, one person is talking about this a fair amount. His name is Tim Ferriss. And so for those of you who have paid attention to the 4-Hour Workweek, which is his book, right? You don't actually need to read the book, you just understand the book by the title. Tim Ferriss's conjecture is that using a fair number of these technical advances, you can build automated lifestyle businesses that kick out an appropriate amount of cash, and you can go do whatever the heck you want with your life. Why is that important? Yeah.
Rob, he talks about this is, I think, called the muse, but it's really amazing because it allows you to do what you want to do, not the opposite. All of a sudden, life can become enjoyable. And he talks about how it's a great book, right?
Yeah.
But he talks about how he's won a karate championship in China or something just from a month of studying because he can do what he wants to do. But this allows for a lifestyle. He's also enriching and enabling other people because he's outsourcing the media.
Yeah, I'm going to really steal on this for the notes. Right, the reason this is important is you get to do what you want to do, not what you have to do. Now, what Tim Ferriss means by that is what you want to do in terms of go explore your life, which is really cool. What I mean by what you want to do is that, again, statistically speaking, in this room, actually, how many bioengineers do we have? Usually, we have one. You're a bioengineer. We usually have one or two, right? And the bioengineer in the class wants to cure cancer. That's great. There are lots of us who don't want to cure cancer. Usually in a class like this, there's one or two people who want to build $1 billion Web 2.0 software startup, and that's great too, right? But this class isn't just for the person who wants to build innovative molecules, nor is it for the person who wants to build high-growth businesses. The point I'm trying to make and why I'm arguing you should think about being in this class, because I'm still making the case that you ought to be here, is that I don't know what you, Jonathan, want to do with your life. I just don't know. What I do know is that your educational system tells you, and has since you were 5, when you said, I want to paint for a living. Or in my case, I wanted to dance. I wanted to be a dancer. Can't make money as a dancer. Isn't that what you were just thinking? Because that's the first thing that people think about when they think about whatever it is that you really wanted to do. So somewhere I'm proposing, for those of you, by the way, who want to design billion-dollar businesses, or you want to design molecules, or you want to create a semiconductor, I'm not talking to you anymore, and you can stop paying attention and update your Twitter stats. For those of us who want to get through life, we want to build beautiful things. We really want to we want to have a skateboard company because we really want to. We want to shape surfboards because we really want to. We want to be dancers because we really want to. Or whatever it is that's inside your heart that you wanted to do, or in my case in the undergraduate classes, people when they actually secretly reveal what they care about pets. They've always cared about pets. They've always wanted to build a no-kill shelter. They've always cared about pets, and they've always just wanted to be outside, so they want to make a dog walking business. And the whole institutional framework tells you how not possible that is. And what I'm arguing is that these insights that we're going to talk about in class, they apply powerfully to high-growth businesses because that's what they're designed for. But I'm making a very powerful suggestion, which is if we splice these insights learned in the Darwinian hothouse of Silicon Valley, we splice those insights into small businesses, you actually end up with durable, mutant, unkillable small businesses, and as a result, you impact the small business failure rate. So for those of you who want to build you're like, I love clothes, and I want to make a boutique. I like watches, and I want to make a watch company. You can do that now. That's the underlying argument. So that's why I think this class is important, and that's really at the 30,000 foot level where the class is going. We're going to take insights, techniques, and technology that has been developed over the course of 20 to 30 years in Silicon Valley. We're going to inject that into the businesses that you care about, and we're going to see what happens. As it turns out, I already know what happens because I've been running this for 3 years. I'll tell you a little secret. Lots of amazing shit happens. So I'm going to save the Jurvetson piece. How are we doing? You guys okay so far? Okay. How are we doing on time? Can you give me a time check? Okay. I'm doing okay. I'm going to try to get you guys out of here by 7. Is that all right? All right. Great. So in order to do that, I'm going to say this. All right. Funny, this is I love this guy. Don't let me say this. Okay. So for those of you taking notes, here's a new distinction, right? So I've gone through here, right? I've given you distinction A, right? Entrepreneurship is commonplace. Distinction B, there's a set of unifying principles around technology, a relentless change, technical change that provides opportunity for us to do something that's never been done before, which is to create durable, meaningful, powerful, small businesses that are mutants and unkillables. How many of you guys want to start a restaurant? Do you? Awesome. Oh my God. You know, what happened? So have you told anyone your secret of starting a restaurant?
I don't know.
You told people you want to start a restaurant?
Yeah.
And what do they tell you?
They want to stop with me.
What? Okay, they're supposed to tell you you're going to fail because 9 out of 10 restaurants fail. So you must be an awesome cook. No. Do you have any restaurant experience?
No.
Perfect. You're just one. Yeah, great. Right. This is awesome. And you want to start a restaurant, Bob? And you do? So do people try to talk you out of it because like 9.5 out of every 10 restaurants fail and it's totally painful, blah, 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 blah? Yeah, don't believe that. It's not true. Is it not true? I don't have a picture today. May I borrow this?
That's yours.
This one's mine. Is it recording?
No, mine is.
Good. So, as proof of how awesome this is a photo from, you can look her up on the internets. Her name is Nicole Mornian. Nicole is in Los Angeles. I'm giving you a proof for why you should, drawing from here. I'm trying to find Nicole Mornian. Nicole works at GTA. It is a restaurant. It is on the corner of Abbot Kinney. You guys know where Abbot Kinney is in Venice? So, most expensive real estate on the planet, right? Exactly where you ought not to start a restaurant. First, don't start a restaurant because it's crazy and you'll work really hard. 2, if you're going to start a restaurant, you obviously don't want to set up shop on Abbot Kinney, the most expensive real estate on the planet. You would never do that. That would be totally dumb. And if you did that, you would definitely not want to start a takeout. right? You don't want to start low-end food with high margins and high volume. You want to start high-end food with high margins, low volume. Of course, Nicole doesn't do any of those things. She ignores everyone, starts a restaurant, starts on the corner of Abbott Kinney, and starts a takeout place called GTA. It is an award-winning takeout spot. And Nicole, and it is. And Nicole runs that thing, and Nicole is doing something now that she's demonstrated, and she gave the giant middle finger to everyone who told her that she ought not to be able to do that. Basically, by the way, she's an ex-Foundry kid, right? And there's a little Foundry LA that's churning away, and the Foundry is the incubator that the School of Business has produced. And the Foundry LA is a satellite office, the way that Fight Club has like little satellite fight clubs. And Nicole is a avid graduate and coach, and now she's doing something else stupid, which she should absolutely not do, which is next door she's opening a pie shop. Why? Because there's no good pie on the west side. Utterly creative human being. Nicole is my hero. Nicole's my hero because she took the notion of business discovery seriously, which in taking that seriously means I'm going to wed advanced business operations technology, business discovery technology to my passion. My passion happens to be coffee, takeout food, and pies, and she's absolutely ruling it. She is just slaying it. So, restaurateurs, open your restaurant, especially in Salt Lake. We have no good coffee here. The food here is terrible, and it repulses me and makes me want to leave and go back to LA. So, help a brother out. So what kind of restaurant do you Really? And you? I'm Rob, by the way.
Rob Pratt.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Coffee shop.
Nice. So, you should definitely not open a coffee shop, right? Because there's coffee shops everywhere.
Starbucks at the
Yeah, obviously. You should totally not do that. And what kind of restaurant do you want?
A healthy comfort.
Oh my God, healthy comfort food. That'll never work. Right? Right? The whole world is busy telling you no. It's been telling you no since you were 5 about the thing that you most wanted to do. And so another opportunity in this class, this is not just for note-taking, it's for you to consider, right? As you're driving home or you're hanging out with your partner or spouse or petting your dog, as I'll do later tonight, remember the thing that you didn't do that people talked you out of, that you wanted to do your whole life? Don't do what I did and not dance for a living. Right? You end up teaching classes like this, and that sucks. But seriously, I view this class, that's why I have a bit of a missionary zeal about this class, because I view it as an opportunity to reconnect people with the things they most wanted to do in life, so they can either travel, as Tim Ferriss has done, right? You create those automated systems and run off and do that stuff, or you can, which is cool, right? There's another alternative to the 4-hour work week. The 4-hour work week is automate the tedious job that you don't want to do, right? Because work is tedious. Alternatively, you can spend your entire freaking life doing exactly the work that you've always wanted to do. And seriously, that's what I get to do every day in school. That's what I think is most powerful about the opportunity. Second distinction in that mix is that the skills required to discover a business, specifically coming up with ideas and evaluating them, and putting them through the rigorous process of vetting, stress testing them, those sets of skills are different than the skills required to organize and grow a business. Now that I've mentioned this, it probably occurs as obvious to you that this is true, right? Now that we just stop for a minute, that seems straightforward. As it turns out, this is profoundly crazy because this isn't how entrepreneurship teaching works. We conflate, and most people do unthinkingly, conflate the skills required to stress test and come up with a business from growing it. Operating a business is a craft. It can take your whole life to get good at managing and leading. It can take years of mentorship to get good at that. Operations is no joke. It is good. It is, frankly, the domain of the MBA program. All the technical skills that you're learning here put you in a position someday to be a reasonable operator. They do not, nor are they designed to, focus on this issue of discovering businesses, which is why people are so bad at it. This, in contrast to this, which can take, is mentorship-driven, craft-based. It can take decades to learn. This requires no fancy pants mentor to teach you how to do. It can be taught in weeks or days, or in the case of Startup Weekend. And do any of you guys know what Startup Weekend is? Right? The fact that Startup Weekend exists demonstrates that these things can be learned in a 36-hour period. These things are different. And because they're different, the class functions differently. So, any questions so far? Or any thoughts so far? Any concerns so far? This is boring.
No.
Did you, actually, no, I don't mean, I'm not fishing. What I really mean to say is the stuff that I'm telling you, have you guys evolved enough that like you're now, this is no longer surprising to any of you, or is what I'm saying sort of weird? Because I can't tell. Like I'm still waiting. Someday there will be no need for this class because everyone will. I'll get to here and people will be like, "No doubt, man. We know that now. We've known that for like 20 years, and then I'll retire."
It's refreshing.
It's not boring, but it's troubling in a way. It's annoying
Because
it's like the things you know and you deny that sometimes that they exist. And I think I'm excited that we're gonna get to practice this, because like reading this eventually is like, okay, then.
So you might ask yourself why people are so committed to viewing entrepreneurship as difficult. That's the last couple of slides. But you might ask yourself, like, what's the problem here? Why are people so committed that it'd be hard? Right? Because you know the answer to how it works, right? You have this idea. Right? You can try to change this and make it work. Let's see if this is better. Oh, not better. Oh. Sorry about the video over. I'm going to live with this, and we'll just live with it together. So you have an idea, right? So if you have an idea, and we're operating in normal world, the institutional world around entrepreneurship, what is the conventional wisdom for what you're supposed to do next? You pull the playbook off the wall, you have an idea, it's time to do something. So what's the first entry in the playbook?
Capital.
Right? Oh yeah, of course, I've got to have capital. Right? There's all the list of things that you need to have, right? I need money and all sorts of other stuff. What am I supposed to do? What do I go do? Yeah, man. Exactly. Who said business plan? Yeah, right? You go get a coach, you attend a program, you buy a book, you complete a seminar, you follow the instructions, right? There's an instruction manual, 15 business planning for dummies. You just go to Barnes & Noble and you pull it off in step 1 and you follow it, right? And that's what you do. And it's very clear and understandable. There's a guy who knows something, right? He knows something you don't know, right? And then you do the thing, right? And he follows instructions, right? And what does all that do is it doesn't tell you anything about the stuff between the idea that you have and the production of the plan itself. So what we're going to focus on in this class is the chunk of place that exists right here at phase 1 where you have the idea, collect underpants, right? And then there's all this mysterious stuff that happens here, and then step 3, of course, is profit, right? And so what we want to understand is how we get over here. And the business plan isn't going to help you do that because the business plan is a forecasting mechanism to tell you about the profit that you would get if your underpants idea were working. So traditional business planning, I would argue, and by the way, for those of you who are hearing in this that I have some beef against business plans, I do not. Right? I'm not. Often I've heard communications back from this stuff gets like filtered up through the MBA talking drum. It gets like the MBA program manager, and then gets to the program manager's manager, and eventually shows up at Taylor's desk, where Rob Webker has been running around telling people that business plans are stupid. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying something completely different. I actually don't care anything about business plans. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I am going to tell you where business plans come from because it's an interesting historicist perspective on them. They're historically drawn from, for those of you, any of you work at Rio Tinto, for or a large company? Yeah, so like at large companies, you have a capital expenditure authorization process, right? Where do you work?
Pharmaceutical cells?
Got it. So you don't, so your pharma one doesn't. Anyone work at a place with like machines? Well, you do, but it's a lot easier. You work in a place with like machines. So I want to buy a ginormous, big-wheeled, 10-foot tall machine so that I can do some machine things with it. What I have to do is I have to fill out a capital expense request, completely appropriate, right? It goes into the finance department. The finance department does some stuff. Presumably they calculate stuff based on, you guys taking a corporate finance class? Yeah, so what are sorts of stuff that you would do? So imagine, like, if this were a dorky class, right, and I were asking you to do CapEx stuff, I'd say, well, I want to buy a giant, like, digger machine to dig up my backyard. Can I do that? And, like, what's the NPV of that? And what would you do? Yeah, there's all those little, all of a sudden you get to this like deploy acronyms, like you just get to drop it in, you get to whip out the spreadsheet, right, and you get to like 3-letter IRR, the thing your way to death, right, and there's a number, and at the end if the number is positive by some hurdle rate, you buy the project, and you buy the tractor machine, and if it's less than what you want or it's in the red, you don't, right, not hard to understand, right, fixed factors, fixed selection pressures, there's control, there's equilibrium, there's not a lot of confusion, you have the capital to deploy, you deploy it, there's a return, etc., right? Right? That is great, but you might ask yourself, as I did around business planning, is, well, why on earth did we ever imagine that a set of documents useful in that sort of context is going to be at all useful for figuring out new firms? Why did we decide that was true? In other words, why has entrepreneurship education focused on building a business plan? Why? So just imagine you're lazy. It's pretty easy to figure out.
I think more than anything, just give you some type of a guide. Some people feel comforted in knowing that there's something there, some tool to assist them to accomplishing certain steps.
And you just follow steps.
Correct.
Right.
It's easier and seems safer.
It's certainly safer, right? I could imagine a class where I came in and said, check it out, there's a 10-step process to starting a business. As it turns out, our class is 10 weeks long. Imagine that. And I'm going to teach you the 10 steps over the course of 10 weeks. And at the end, there'll be an artifact called the business plan. And I can grade it, right? I can look at it and assess its quality. I'm actually suggesting a different world, one in which there's lots of ambiguity and uncertainty, where we're going to be focusing on a process, where it's conceivable to imagine that businesses could wander all over the place. Maybe some of them might not actually produce business plans at the end of it. Oh my God, how would I grade you? Oh, goodness. How troubling. I guess I better not do that. I guess I just should stick with the business plan because it's a lot easier. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week N, week 10, I give you a document, I give you a grade, you pretend to have learned something, I pretend to have cared, everyone is happy. Right? So baked into our historicist notions of entrepreneurship education is a hidden commitment to a pedagogy that doesn't make any sense. That's my argument. So I'm not arguing that business plans are bad. I'm simply saying that it's ill-suited as a container as an education. So now let me give you some circumstantial evidence as to why you should think that maybe instead of focusing on the artifact of business planning, we should work on the antecedent processes. And I have three examples. Actually, 2. I have 2 examples and some other circumstantial evidence. The first is drawn from the area that I know best, which is venture capital. So venture capital is the funding of early stage high growth companies. So that's what venture capitalists do. Venture capitalists take other people's money, they find high growth potential projects to fund, and then they fund them. So this example comes from Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield and Byers, and it comes from their portfolio company meeting, their portfolio meeting, a meeting of all of the companies in which they've invested. So take as axiomatic for this example that Kleiner Perkins is a venture capital company, that they're one of the most successful, meaning they're the longest running, and one of the ones that generates the highest returns, which is also true. And thus, they're one of the highest reputation venture capital firms in the Valley, which implies a few things. One, it implies if they've been around for a long time and they're really successful, they're probably really good at picking good companies. That would be one piece of, one thing you could infer. Another thing you could infer is that not only could they pick good companies, but because they're high reputation, because they're very successful, because they're very visible, and because they're really long-standing, they're also going to attract the best companies. So we have these two prevailing winds that suggest that if you were talking about high-growth firms, it is likely that KP is going to be one of the firms that's going to be most likely to pick the best companies. And as it turns out, 75% of the companies that they fund abandoned their original business. This is post-funding. And another interesting statistic is that those people have rebooted their business up to 3 times. I think the average the average number of restarts for these businesses is 3. So that's like me giving you $1 million, me assuming that you're a high growth, high impact, awesome firm. I know you're a good team. I know you've got great promising technology because I see the best deals. I walk away for a month and a half to fly my airplane and basically go cause all sorts of trouble. I show up at the board meeting. He's like, oh yeah, that business idea that we had, the one that you fund us for, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. We're doing some other thing. We were focusing on internet chicken photos. We're not doing that anymore. We're totally focused on internet pizza delivery. And I go, what do I do as KP? Notice I don't throw him out the window. I don't fire him. I don't scream at him. I go, oh, super sweet. Internet pizza delivery, awesome. Let me write you another check. I hand him that check. Then I go off. I fly around for a while, right? I play golf. I do whatever it is that I do as a venture capitalist. I come back. Hey man, how's the pizza delivery thing going? He goes, oh dude, that was so 2012. We are not doing pizza delivery anymore. We are doing, we're selling red Bozo the Clown noses that we found on Alibaba to children, to crippled children. And it's going to be awesome. And we're going to make millions, right? Do I kill him? No. I write him another check. That's the nature of the business. That's weird, right? If businesses were about planning and not about discovery, you would imagine that we'd be better than that. But even the best people are not better than that. Another example comes from London Business School, their entrepreneurship summer school. 70 companies over 5 years. 63 of the 70 are still in business. That sounds good, right? That's reversing the small business failure rate. Here's the catch. More than 60% of those 63 are pursuing different ideas than they originally conceived that they were going to do. Right? Businesses, the point I'm trying to make here is businesses they're not fixed objects that you plan and figure out and then execute. They wander. Even the best ones wander. Even at London Business School, even at Kleiner Perkins. Because building a plan before validating your business idea is a really, really bad idea. Building guns like that, which in some cases, I think for handgun control, that's probably the best solution. So you think, just in case you were wondering, right? You think, well, maybe it's different, Rob, not in high growth firms or the London Business School heterogeneous group. Maybe you're going to tell me that corporate product development is better. Well, as it turns out, corporate product development, where you would imagine would be even easier to build businesses. Why? If you've taken a strategy class, corporations are resource rich, right? They have lots of capital, they have lots of humans to deploy, they have lots of natural advantages where you can imagine new businesses could form. It's crazy that businesses that are established struggle to introduce new products. Jay Barney would say that that's crazy talk, right? Because it is. It doesn't make any sense. Right? These businesses ought to be able to kick off new products and services like no one's business. They have all this natural advantages, prevailing winds, runway, a brand, global footprint. But no, corporate product development is even worse. It takes 50 attempts often at a product before you can find one that works. My favorite example is the one that you told me, which was the Nike one. Would you mind sharing the Nike example?
Yeah, so Nike has a line of skate shoes called the Nike 6.0. The reason why they're named 6.0 is because it took them about 6 attempts to actually break into the action sports market successfully, with each attempt taking probably tens of millions of dollars. So you think about, Nike, one of the most recognizable brands in the U.S. in the world, in fact, taking so many attempts and so much money to actually break into it in the industry.
So yeah,
Actually, Google Maps, they have shitload of projects, and you barely hear like Google Maps was out of that, but
Yeah.
I bet you most of people cannot even recognize what Google Labs did before they shut it down.
Yeah. So Google Labs was an experiment around 20% time to see if you could churn off products at a better rate than others, because if you're Google, you have the smartest people, the best brand, and plenty of prevailing winds and resources to bring to bear to that. But instead, Labs got them basically nowhere. They got maps out of it, which is cool, by the way, but that's about it. And that's a great example, right? So given that you're probably not a Kleiner Perkins funded company right now, and you're not going to London Business School, the best of the best, and you're not working at some corporation where you're going to invent all sorts of cool ideas, chances are, just like everyone else, your plan A, the first business idea you have, sucks, right? And it sucks profoundly. And it sucks in ways that are almost impossible for you to see on your own. Otherwise, you would, because you don't think that way. We're all wired to believe that our idea is awesome. We're like Gollum with the magic ring, going like, my precious. You're all into your idea. You think it's amazing. No one can tell you otherwise. If I told you your business would fail anyway, you get mad at me and probably give me like lower marks on my like teacher evaluation thingy-bobber or whatever, right? Your idea sucks. And so the question becomes, how can you get to an idea that's viable before you run out of cash? That is the core issue associated with the business planning process, right? Another important feature of this is again, we're now on another bullet point, right? Another feature, common feature, one feature of the business planning process is that it wanders, right? LBS shows us it wanders, Kleiner shows us it wanders, and research on corporate product development tells us it wanders. What is another feature of the process as we understand it? First, is it's really, really hard to understand, and it's really scary, and it's vague and ambiguous. And what happens in an environment where there's lots of vagueness and ambiguity and concern? Well, it is populated by people who are busy wanting to help resolve your ambiguity. No one likes to live in an ambiguous world, and so there will always be human beings that want to sell you a book, give you consulting services, mentor you, have you come to their incubator, attend some conference, even get an MBA, right? What do all these things have in common? They have an underlying assumption that you are a diaper baby, right? And you can't do it on your own. That is the underlying belief, right? For any of these things to make sense, right? What the assumption is like, you can't do it because you're stupid and a diaper baby. But if you give me some of your money, I can help channel you to the elite pathway to success. That is the underlying exchange. The underlying exchange is you're afraid because the process is fear-inducing. You're living in an ambiguous world, and your little brain, all of our little brains hate ambiguity. And all sorts of human beings are eager to capitalize on your fear and your ambiguity avoidance to have you give them money. So every time you go to Barnes & Noble and you feel the irresistible pull to a book that's like the Lean Startup Amazements or the Business Model Thingamabobber or the guy who wants to give you consulting. So did you know that some MBA, some entrepreneurship instructors actually, you come to my office hours and you want me to validate your business idea and I take your consulting money, I take money from you? It's not uncommon, by the way. Happens just down the road. It totally happens. That just happened. And this is on video now, so I'm going to get totally busted. But it's true.
I'll be careful where I
It's
say.
true. Right. There's a person, there's an important person, and they're going to put you on the elite path to success. That is the underlying mechanism. Right? So everyone wants this to be true, right? Everyone wants this to be true. You want it to be true because then you're not afraid anymore, and then the ambiguity is gone. The adult in charge loves it, right? It gives me super exciting because then I get to come home after my mentorship program or my guest lecture where I give you the 10 tips for business, and my partner goes, "What'd you do today?" And I'm like, kind of a big deal, help some people out with my amazing insights, right? Everyone loves this. Loves this solution. So I always like this. This is the business model generation. You know this book, the Business Model Generation Workshop? Why I love this is that this is a book, right, called Business Model Generation. It's designed for, it says it's a handbook for visionaries, game changers, and challengers. And I just love this photo. This is on their website. Right? I'm like, do those people look like visionaries to you? They're freaking white collar, they're all wearing a uniform. They're all doing the exact same thing. They're in some workshop. They're all aspirational middle managers for Deloitte. Right? People are selling you things. There's always someone trying to sell you something. And this book is trying to sell you on this is the de facto startup Bible, except for this new one, which is now actually I think called the Startup Bible. The bottom line is there's always some flavor of the month. This time it's business model generation. By the way, I'm sure business model generation is really cool. I love it. It's really, really neat. Right? But at the end of the day, is this a handbook for visionaries? It's not. Right? Look at the customer list. Ericsson, Telenor, Capgemini, 3M. Recognize any startup names? Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Yeah. Oh yeah, man. High-tech startups, all of them. Right? That's the client list. This book is a totem for aspirational middle managers hoping someday to take it to the next level, where the next level means like a slightly larger cube and maybe if they're lucky a potted plant. And like the phone in their office with the extra speed dial, right? The executive phone, right? That's what you're gonna get. I'm sorry to take these guys' tasks so hard, but it just drives me freaking crazy. Because at the end of the day, I have to unwind all this nonsense that exists in the entrepreneurship space about how you can somehow solve these problems, that they're complicated, and the way that you solve them is with a book, right? What I'm arguing is that they're not complicated at all. We're going to learn them in like 48 hours, and that's all you need. And all this stuff is just noise. And the longer that you avoid it, the better. That is my view. So for those of you who thought they were going to come to class and like I was going to do a lean startup class, or we're going to use the business model canvas, and you're like bent, now's the time to go. Because I'm going to poop all over that stuff. Not that we're going to use it where appropriate, right? But at the end of the day, this is just more middle manager crap. It's just designed for the aspirational middle manager. Because what are these things?
Legos.
Yeah, man. So that's a Lego what? Lego helicopter or whatever the thing's like. Anyone know planes that are here? Yeah, the one that was on Die Hard or Hard Dying or whichever that one. They do like
True Lies.
That was like the best. I watched that when I was doing my trainer, and I'm like, Bruce Willis is like on a Harrier jump jet, like on the outside of it. I'm like, really, this is out of control. And that, this guy's obviously really into it because he's built basically a small scale Lego model of a giant battleship. Pretty awesome. I'm not wrong. Nothing wrong with Lego battleships. But this is what focusing on business plan construction in a classroom is like, from my perspective, right? Mastering Lego spaceship construction does not qualify you for a job at NASA. It's not like the guy who made that gets to go into NASA or the JPL and he's like, so why should you work at the JPL, you young man? He's like, oh dude, I have built the most amazing model TIE fighter with like laser beams on it. It's amazing. I know a lot about that, right? There's nothing about this that teaches you how to master building a business. It does teach you something. It teaches you how to master building Lego spaceships, which is pretty cool, right? That's awesome. But it's not the startup phenomenon. It's just a Lego spaceship. So, how are we doing on time? 10 minutes? 7?
It's 7.
Okay, can you guys give me just a few more minutes? Okay, so the business planning puzzle is resolved when you understand a new distinction that I'm now giving you, the distinction between an artifact and a byproduct. So, the whole point of the class is to focus not on the object. There may or may not be objects that we produce, artifacts, bits of paper. Another artifact might be an actual website. It's conceivable that could be an artifact. We're not going to focus on the artifacts. We're going to focus on the antecedent processes that generate the artifacts. In the same way that an internal combustion engine, right, spews out a bunch of byproducts, CO2 and particulate matter, right? Those things are interesting, right? But you're not going to understand internal combustion by focusing on them. You're going to understand internal combustion in two ways. First, looking at how the machine works, and second, having some theory about how thermodynamics works, the Cournot principle. You cannot understand how it is to build an internal combustion engine unless you have some good theory. So my final point that I want to make tonight is that most entrepreneurship education and most thinking about the phenomenon is actually built on bad theory. And if you get bad theory, you get bad outcomes. And that is why the course is what it is. So as I said, the working assumption of the class is that all or part of the business idea that you currently have is wrong, whatever that means. And that is totally fine, because the whole point of the class is to get on the court and evolve that fast. And so we're going to spend all of our time learning a set of evolutionary processes that help to evolve the bad idea, whatever you have, into an idea that's tractable. That is the focus of the class. So they're reasons. So when I typically do this, I now have to make a case. I've made a case for what the class is about, and it's built on bad theory and how that stuff works. But what I haven't done is explain why you should not just simply drop this class and read a book. That's a reasonable conjecture, right? Why should you just drop this class and read a book? Well, as it turns out, soon you'll be able to. Right now, none of this stuff, although it's in the domain, and there's a lot of people talking about it, it's not codified very well. And so 2 to 3 to 4 years from now, you won't need to come to a lecture to get this stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of what's going to be taught here is quasi-novel or only on the bleeding edge. And so it's very, very difficult to find a programmatic curriculum around it. That's the main reason. As I said, the domain is largely patchwork. It's not very well thought through, and there's not a lot of understanding of the underlying theory. As I said, soon I won't be teaching this class. Soon all of the things I'm going to teach you are going to be baked into your underlying educational curriculum years in advance. And by the time you get here, none of what I'm going to say would be interesting, and I'll have to create an entirely new class to do new stuff. Unfortunately, that's not today, and I can't wait till it happens. But I want to talk about this. So 15 minutes I get to tell some funny stories, 10 minutes I get you out early. But I have 15 minutes because I love Mugatus. All right, so there's one other thing to think about around the small business failure rate. And that is, you can see here, like there's all those books that I was talking about that I was just giving a hard time about. And this space, right, it is so hot right now. Everyone is talking about how to build startups. Everyone is staking a claim on how to do entrepreneurship, and it's really, really important. However, there's one thing that's missing, and this applies to this question of why you should drop the class, why you can't drop the class, is because although we're getting closer and closer and closer to having some books and some pedagogy that will make sense, for me, there's still one massive elephant in the room. And the massive element in the room is that none of the existing technologies for building businesses, all these so hot right now books, none of them make a material impact on the small business failure rate. So, said another way, right? If this stuff actually worked, if it wasn't merely fodder for selling a book, one would imagine that you would see some sort of positive effect on the number of small businesses that are succeeding or failing, right? That stands to reason. And as it turns out, that's simply not true. Whether or not, and the evidence that this is not true is examining the current outputs of accelerators. So let me give you some circumstantial evidence. There are these things. They're called business accelerators. In the business accelerators, they teach these principles explicitly. They're all built on the notion that we're going to teach you why you should come into an accelerator, right? I fly you in, right? I say, you apply to my accelerator. I say, great, come on in. And you and 10 other teams are going to work with me over the course of the summer. And I'm going to teach you how to be lean-full business model scaling people. Right? I'm going to read all these books. We're going to read them together. I'm going to get some high-powered mentors to come in, and they're going to mentor you. We're going to take it to the next level, right? If these technologies worked at all, one would imagine that it would make a material difference on accelerator outcomes. And the Kauffman Foundation and Draper Fisher Jurvetson have produced 2 studies recently. And the studies that they have produced indicate that accelerators either provide no value or slightly neutral value. So all of that extra effort that people are building, trying to do, right, is not making a big difference, right? And I'm a scientist, right? I care a lot about the treatment effect. So if you are someone who's just building an accelerator, and your business model is taking equity from individual startups like you and you and you, and I take your money, right? I don't have any real economic incentive to be really straight about what my outcomes are. I don't need to do that. In fact, there's good reason to suggest that it'd be a bad idea, right? But I'm a scientist, right? That's what I do. I do science, and I care a lot about treatment effect, right? It matters to me. So if this stuff is supposed to work, right? If it's not working, there's no difference between these 2 outcomes, right? I put an entrepreneur, I run them through an accelerator, they come out with curly hair and fail, or I put another population of untreated people who don't go through accelerators, they have straight hair and they fail, and no one cares. That doesn't work, right? There's something missing, right, in the dialogue currently around business building. Something missing from this pile of information that is currently out there, which is right at the bleeding edge. This is the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge. And if it were awesome, then it would do something different than that, and it does not. It does that, which is it basically takes a person and gives them a perm and calls it good, right? Something is missing. And the missing distinction is what I'm going to leave you with tonight, a few additional slides of why this is the case. Consider that a startup is not a small business in miniature, but is actually a social system. And it's engaged in figuring out its business not under conditions of risk, where you can figure out net present value, IRR, and any other spreadsheet-related 3-letter acronym you want, but you're actually operating under conditions of uncertainty. What is the difference between risk and uncertainty for those of you who are probability, anyone's taking a stats class? Because we can't move forward until we have a deep understanding of this. Yeah?
Well, I know just from crossing the street, right? There's risk in crossing the street doesn't mean that you get hit or driving your car, but uncertainty means if you don't have any idea, you need to take it one step at a time. Eric Ries said pivot, but you need to be able to check your surroundings and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, that's a fair example for crossing the street. So when you're crossing the street, right, it's a risky endeavor, but it's not an uncertain endeavor because a car is not going to magically appear where it isn't and smash you. That's not how cars work. And so the difference between risk and uncertainty is that this is a terrible looking probability distribution, but it is one. So risk implies there's a probability distribution, that there's a distribution that you can understand, and that outcomes are going to occur in the distribution, wherever they are, right? That is risk. Risk can be modeled, risk can be hedged, which you can use portfolio theory to mitigate risk. Uncertainty is different. The definition of uncertainty is that there is no probability distribution from which to draw. Therefore, it is impossible, by definition, impossible, to employ all of our traditional risk management techniques to resolve this problem. And most technologies, most business development technologies, with primary design considerations that are focused on de-risking businesses, are by definition not going to help that much. Bad input, bad output. That is the underlying conjecture. That's not to say, by the way, that businesses aren't some portion of risky and some portion of uncertain. I'm simply saying that technologies that have their primary design consideration focused on de-risking indicates that they're focusing on the wrong thing and are likely going to produce the wrong outcomes. So, good theory is based on good ontology. And at the end of the day, if the world is uncertain, that implies something very, very profound about how we think about entrepreneurial ideas. It suggests ex ante at the beginning. It is not just difficult for me to evaluate your business idea. It is impossible for me to evaluate your business idea in the strictest sense of the word. Not me, not you, nobody. This is an ontological claim I'm making about the world, which is it is ex ante not possible for some adult to evaluate your business idea. It cannot be done. The act of asking someone whether or not my business idea is valid or not is a fool's errand. The mentor that thinks that they're helping you by evaluating your business idea is doing you a disservice because they're allowing you to believe that you're living in a risky world when you're really living in an uncertain world. This is an ontological. Hi. I don't. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, are you telling me it's across the hall, or are you telling me that you don't know? I'm sorry, are you telling me it's across the hall, or are you telling me?
It has been across the hall.
Ah, got it. It may be not here because tonight's Valentine's Day and maybe people are doing Valentine things. Okay, try, maybe the radio will help. Just be like, where are you? Over. Uncertainty.
There is no risk model.
Right, it's like, so I'm trying to leave you with something that's really weird, profound, and irritating, right? Because what it does, if you take it seriously, if you believe that these things are their ontologic status of a business idea is inherently uncertain, it implies a whole nested set of things you ought to worry about, none of which involve asking some adult to resolve your uncertainty for you. Our entire entrepreneurship program is built around a different approach to thinking about entrepreneurial activity. It is insensible as a result for me to have a business plan class, right? That's the punchline. If I believe this is true, a whole host of interesting conclusions follow. One of which is there's no way that I can take your venture ideas and give them a grade because I can't evaluate them for salience. It makes no sense. So that's the world that I live in. I inhabit. Planet Rob, which you're now inhabiting, is a world in which business ideas are inherently uncertain, that the ideas that you have inside you are just as valuable as any other, and just as likely, from a random draw perspective, to produce a high-growth business as a lifestyle business. So, said another way, if you'll forgive me, it's as if you have a box, right? It's like the old Shredder's cat box. And like you have an idea and you open up and you decide you have an idea for a dog walking business, and you look inside and it's $1 billion business. You look inside and it's a giant turd. You look inside and it's a lifestyle business. At the beginning, you can't know. So that suggests something really important about you. It suggests that your ideas, whatever they are useful and worth thinking about, and that your intentions matter most. The most important thing an entrepreneur has to work with are his or her intentions. If you want to build a growth business, you will more likely than not, when you open the box, help to evolve a growth business. But you won't have one ex ante because it means nothing. So be clear about what your intentions are, and that will help more than anything else. The most important thing, the most important takeaway for you, besides the fact that in my world, we're living in a strange world, a world which is uncertain, a world where you cannot, at the face of it, make a prediction about a business idea because of its ontological status. It suggests that most of what happens inside the entrepreneur happens inside the entrepreneur. His or her intentions, his or her desires. We'll just try to combine that with a little bit of science, which is what we're going to do for 10 minutes. So 3 more slides and I think I'm done. So what is the intention of the course? What are we attempting to do? We're going to produce venture concepts that are understandable to other people, that are intellectually tractable, that they're testable, and most important, things that you actually care about. So my request in this class is that there are no Lego business ideas. It's just not interesting. So if you do not have a business idea that you want to work on, get one. If you don't want to get one, that is also okay. Find an opportunity to be around someone who's passionate in the classroom, who actually has a dream that they want to pursue, and help them. There's nothing more exciting than helping another person fulfill their dream. If you want to build a coffee shop and you're really dead serious about it, awesome, I will help you. I don't have an idea right now. I made a coffee shop last year. I can tell you a lot about making them. Why did I make a coffee shop last year? I often invent businesses with class. I made one because people said it was really hard. So I just made one. It's not hard. And then I shut it. Actually, I gave it away and then we shut it down. It's not that big of a deal. You can make one. So we're going to make venture concepts. We're going to create dashboards or instrumentation pieces that allow you to share the results of your business stress tests with other people. So in order to have a dashboard, that implies that you have a common framework or language to understand businesses. We're going to be able to trade that around and then coach each other, right? Because I'm not going to be able to coach you. We will all coach one another. We're going to learn how to perform these stress tests, which can help us take an idea that you have, which at the beginning will suck, and eventually will wander itself to create an idea that works. And then finally, we'll review the components of a viable business model, and then work on each part of the business until it's viable. The revenue model, the gross margin model, the operating model, the working capital model. And we'll all be doing this in dialogue together. Okay, so I lied. I have 4 more slides. This is still fun. You guys still want to deal? Okay, just check. I don't want to waste your time. So, who's this guy? Anyone know? Right, Doc Brown, right, from Back to the Future. So, what's the deal with Doc Brown?
That's obvious.
He's definitely a crazy inventor. And what does he invent? What is his most notable invention? The freaking flux capacitor. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, it's okay. He invents a thing called the flux capacitor. He harnesses that thing to a car or something, and then like drives the car at some speed and like generates a bunch of gigawatts or something that eventually allows him to travel through time. That is the underlying premise of the movie. Crazy guy who travels through time. Awesome. So here's an interesting catch, right? So there's like 3 movies, right? And I think in one of the movies, doesn't Doc Brown end up going to the insane asylum or something like this? Is that right? We'll just pretend that happens. I think it's like 2 or 3. But it's important to think about because here's Doc Brown, right? And he's claiming he looks like a professor. He also looks crazy like a professor. But how do you know that Doc Brown ought to either be sent to an insane asylum or got the Nobel Prize? Like, right, in the movie, right, they have to solve this problem, right? Doc Brown, in the first part of the movie, is like freaking crazy, right? He's really weird, his hair's moving around, and he's scaring Michael J. Fox a lot, right? You remember, right? And of course, you know, the classic movie trope is that you have to have the appearance of something that gives the guy credibility. And in this case, the credibility is the flying car. Like, you finally decide that Doc Brown is not actually crazy, but is actually a time-traveling future genius when the car shows up and he actually flies down in the car. And then it's over, right? Suspension of belief is over at that point. So what I'm talking about today, right, is the functional equivalent, by the way. Like, if this were a class where I was teaching entrepreneurship pedagogy, or I was at USASB, or some other institutional function, and you were my colleagues, and we were all professors and talking about how to start entrepreneurship businesses, I would sound like this guy, right? Except, right, people would be thinking I'm completely insane, right? Because what I'm talking about is utterly at variance with how the pedagogy works today. So, in order for me to avoid this problem, in order for me to obviate the challenge of dealing with the fact that I have to deal with people who think I'm crazy, one solution, the one that I always like, basically, whenever I need to do something full-on crazy, which is usually 3-4 times a year, right? If the moment that I press that I know I'm going to deal with people and it's going to be crazy, I think about building a flying car. The flying car is the existence proof, right, that you're not crazy. Because if you were crazy, or more accurately, you're crazy but correct, which is Doc Brown. He's crazy and he's correct. So I'm going to argue that the accelerator, the incubator, the thing that we have attached to the School of Business called the Foundry. One way to think about it, I'll just pull the curtain off of the Foundry so that you can be in on the joke, like I am, is that the Foundry is the existence proof for the fact that this stuff works. The Foundry is my flying car. So what we've done at the Foundry is we've taken a bunch of people, just like you, utterly heterogeneous pile of folks, some of whom want to build biotech businesses, some want to build watch companies, some want to build restaurants. And we shoved them through the Foundry. We focused on training entrepreneurial teams in the practices that I'm describing to you in class. And the results were that we, over 5 3-month cohorts over 3 years, we've trained 100 teams, basically right around 300 participants, that have produced 70 street legal businesses. In the context of the 3-month intervention, produced about $8 million in revenue, and now longitudinally over the period of time, just north of 70, almost $80 million in revenue. On basically pizza. No mentors, no fancy monitors, no. We have. If anyone been to the Foundry space, it's a shithole, isn't it? Right. No cleanly lit, super nice building with like chalkboards everywhere and fancy people with ties pointing with the whiteboard pen, taking the photo action shot for the camera. None of that. It's just gritty, scrappy student entrepreneurs in this dirty, dingy building using cast-off reject computers. No mentors, no hope, no equity, no consulting, no lawyers, no nothing. Everything that everyone tells you you need to have in order to make your business work, we simply eschew all of it. Do we have anything in there? We don't even, at the old Foundry, we had a wireless connection that was essentially a cable modem. So it was like internet through a straw. I mean, I'm trying to think of other like horrible things, but like what are all the things you would expect in an accelerator that we didn't have? You took everything that you would expect. Do we have anything in there? No garbage service. Bathroom is outside. Yeah, man, we were stoked. We got a bathroom, we were amped. Like before we were peeing and yowling our old days. And it works. So that is my flying car. That's my appeal to authority. That's my credibility statement. And what's important to understand about the credibility statement isn't about like me, and what we built. The important thing is that is what teams together of just about this size can do. I've seen it happen all the time. Every 5770 class, which is the other version of this for undergraduates, they're producing businesses in there. MBA students produce businesses. I'm not arguing or advocating or suggesting that you need to build a business. I'm simply saying that if you came in here with a business idea that you want to start, 10 weeks now, you can be operating your business. If you want. And if you don't, no harm done, right? You get that I'm not attached to that. I'm not attached to you starting a business. What I'm attached to is you getting over the fact that it's somehow complicated. That's what I'm getting attached to getting over. Not a single business plan, by the way. Not one business plan. Not even for teams over fun. Do you have a business plan now? Really, does anyone have a business plan? I don't think so. Just checking. Not a single one. All right. How do I explain that? I explain it because what's that?
I was just thinking, isn't that, I don't want to say it's wrong, because it's not that you don't have a business plan, you have a clear plan of action for everybody to do each week, so it's not that there's no plan,
Yeah.
it's just that there's no business plan.
Yeah, it's not that there's no plan, and I appreciate you mentioning that. This is not suggesting that it's a free-for-all in there. It's not. It's actually one of the more disciplined environments you can be in. Whatever environment you work in that you think is disciplined, I assure you that you have no idea how rigorous the Foundry is. And you're right, it's super rigorous, no business plan. Lots of planning, no business plan. So my argument is, by doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results. Right? So if we teach people the same way, we're going to get the small business failure rate that I'm unwilling to have. And in order to do that, I spent like 3 years dealing with people before the Foundry started working with we'd go to Stanford and people would just be like, oh, you're totally doing it wrong. Obviously. Right? You're doing it wrong because over here in these expertise schools, right, where they're really taking it to the next level, they've got it all figured out. You should do it that way, right? And of course, I wasn't willing to do that, and poor Taylor, thank goodness. What makes our school so awesome is that Taylor Randall, our dean, would go to these meetings, like in Pac-12, blah, blah, blah. People would be like, here's our awesome incubator, here's our awesome blah, blah, blah. And Taylor's like, we have this thing that's sort of dirty and there are no monitors, right? And everyone's like, you're totally doing it wrong. And Taylor would come back and be like, I think we're doing it wrong. I'm like, no, we're not doing it wrong. We're not doing it wrong. It's going to be fine. Just wait a year, and you'll see we're doing it right. Now Taylor looks like a freaking genius. And he is a genius. His biggest genius was saying yes to some guy who was telling him, look, if you want the same outcomes as everyone else gets, if you want to have 2 in 10 failure rate or success rate, yeah, you just keep on keeping on. You do it like everyone else does. If you want something different, you got to do it different. And if you do it different, you're going to have to deal with people who tell you you're doing it wrong. And why I share that with you is the moment that you start building your own businesses, when you start thinking about making a restaurant, when you start thinking about doing something related to healthy comfort food, everyone is going to tell you you're doing it wrong, right? Because you are doing it wrong. By definition, you're turning, all the salmon are moving this way, right? And you're turning this way and going, I'm going this way. And everyone's like, hey man, you're totally doing it wrong. You're like, no doubt, right? Because if there was a competitive, if someone doing it right could produce the healthy comfort food joint, it would have been produced. Got that? Whatever it is that's in your head for what you want to do, right? If it could have been produced conventionally, some other knucklehead or 1,000 knuckleheads would have done so. If there was good coffee here, if people could figure out how to do that conventionally, someone would have done it. Instead, there's just shit coffee everywhere. Always. And always some guy or girl comes along, they open up a coffee shop, and for 3 months they produce coffee that's good, and then all of a sudden it slides off into shit land, right? Clearly it's complicated, because if it could be done, it would have been done. That applies to every idea that you have, right? Be totally comfortable with turning north when everyone else is going south, because if they could do it, it'd be done. So, finally, I mentioned intentions are important. So what can you take away now? Like, now we're almost really done. We're almost really done. Right? What are the things that are the barriers to making this stuff work? One is coming to grips with the fact that this is an uncertain world, and it's completely appropriate for you to dig into your own heart to find out what you really want to do and go do that, and face the choices that you want to make about it. The biggest challenge that you overcome is the barriers to action, and that's fear, fundamentally. Right? At the end of the day, the thing, if you're really lucky, the thing you'll get out of this class is you'll be inoculated from fear, if you are lucky. If you get the most out of this class, and this is optional, basically, this stuff we have to do, right? All that stuff, these things, right? Those are part of the learning objectives. We'll be doing that, right? Let me tell you what you really want to get out of the course. You want to inoculate yourself from the need to sweat people who are giving you a hard time for the rest of your life. And you need to get over fear, because fear is the barrier to entrepreneurial action. That is it at root. Fear of failure, fear of being made wrong, fear of doing it wrong, right? But in a world where no one ex ante knows what's going on, there's no wrong to be done, right? You can inoculate yourself forever from worrying about what other people are telling you. Doesn't mean you have to always go start businesses. I'm simply saying forever and anon, when someone tells you something can't be done, rather than being pissed off or frustrated, instead you'll just smile, and a little part of you inside your heart will warm up, because you'll realize that that person isn't telling you it can't be done. They're simply telling you that they don't know how to do it. And when enough people are telling you that you don't know how to do it, that just means that the world doesn't know how to do it, and you should do it differently. And then when that happens, you have to deal with all the doing it wrong stuff. You can inoculate yourself forever for fear. There is nothing to fear in business. The worst that can happen is that you fail, and it is super boring. You spend your life worrying about this stuff, you will freaking augur your opportunity to make a contribution in life. Because you spend all of your time worrying about being right, all of your time worrying about looking good, all of your time trying to figure out which lever to push or which red button to press so that people will be impressed. And you know what? If you're biting off anything interesting in life at all, you don't get any of that nice red button. No one is going to love you. Everyone's going to tell you you're doing it wrong. Forever. That is how it works. So you have the opportunity in this class to inoculate yourself from fear. And sorry about the quote, it's not listed here. The other thing I'd like to mention, like basically what this is a quote from Tsunetomo from a book called Hagakure, which is a little instruction manual for samurai back in the day. My view of entrepreneurship, once you come to grips with this issue and understand that it's really running your show, at the end of the day, your show is being run by this and your fear of that. You want people to like you, you want them to love you, you want to be doing it right because your whole life you've been doing it right and it gets you a good grade. And that doesn't work when you're trying to do anything interesting. The other thing that you're afraid of is simply afraid to act. That's okay, right? It's just a freaking part of being human. Right? No big deal, right? But at the end of the day, for me, entrepreneurship is really freaking simple. And the quote is, it's a matter of being determined and having the spirit to break through the other side. And Hagakure is basically saying, this is the phrase, like basically saying, all warrior training, everything you need to understand about battle, about killing someone in single combat, is really straightforward. You simply need to be determined and have the spirit to break through the other side. You unsheath the sword and you act, and that is that. And you act without fear, you act without regret, you react without worry, you react without worrying about what other people are thinking about you, because in the face of the other guy in a sword, the only thing that matters is the sword. And the only thing that matters is the other side and getting there. And that is it. So if you're willing to do that, to simply pull your sword out and be committed to get to the other side metaphorically is a business. You will find it. You will experiment your way through to it, if you want. But don't be confused anymore, hopefully in the time that I spent here. Don't be confused that somehow the reason you can't start businesses or the reason you can't make an impact or start businesses is a proxy for any project that you want to entail. Don't be confused that it's lack of knowledge. Don't be confused that it's lack of resources. Don't be confused that you need a mentor or a team. Don't be confused about all the list of things for the why you can't do it. It's really freaking simple. You're afraid of doing it wrong, and you're unwilling to simply see the thing through. That is it. I think, hopefully, sometimes that makes people sad, other times like the guy who killed himself. Sometimes that's inspiring. For me, it's really inspiring and democratizing because it just means anyone can do this. So entrepreneurship's like skateboarding, it's like golfing, surfing, parenting, skiing, anything. Anything where there's excellence to be done, it is a simple matter of careful attention and diligent practice. That is it. So in order to get on this thing, we simply have to pay attention and we have to practice. Discovering a business can be taught, it can be taught quickly, and these skills are valuable and they're generalizable to just about any context, whether you're an established firm or we're talking about a new firm. So please consider getting the most out of this class by inoculating yourself from fear, taking on something interesting to you personally or a massive problem that you want to solve, and work with people that you really like. So the core distinctions from tonight, so that you can understand what it is that I tried to talk about. Entrepreneur, common or rare. Is entrepreneurship common or is it some rare event? It's common. Are entrepreneurs fundamentally capable or are they fundamentally helpless? I'm arguing my bet is you're capable, not helpless. Is the context uncertain or is it risky? For me, the context is it's risky. Process. Is it about the plan or is it about the process or about the discovery process? I'm arguing and betting it's the discovery process. Are the artifacts, how important are they? Do they represent a snapshot in time or are they some goal that you strive for? My argument is that they're byproducts. And finally, startup failure. Is it some natural law like gravity or is it some social agreement that we've all just decided to accept? And my argument is that it's a social agreement. And in this class, from now on, from week 2 to week 10, it is a social agreement that I'm going to violate, period. It is not a natural law. I think, that's all I wanted to talk about. And I think I went a little longer, and I'm grateful for your patience around this stuff. Here's what I would suggest is that Canvas has your assignment for next week, which is to come up with some venture ideas. It's in the assignment section. I'm not super good at using Canvas yet. Please help a brother out, give me a break. It's under the assignment section. I'll be a little ham-handed at using it at first, but we're going to try to use it. And I've noted that I'd like you to come up with venture ideas. I've given you a date. I've asked you to review other people's venture ideas, not necessarily so you can grade them or decide whether they're good or not. Begin to spread the word so we can begin to learn about each other's business ideas. Next week, come prepared not just to talk about your own idea, come prepared to talk about the cool things that you found about the ones that you reviewed. If there are any additional questions about the syllabus, feel free to ask. My job is to help you for 10 weeks. I have no other goal other than to make a difference for you guys. So that means I'm completely available via email, via phone, or in person. And as is my custom, at the end of class, most weeks, we will go out to dinner afterwards on me. So how that's arranged is that the university, that you, if you drink alcohol or get a drink, you will pay for your drink, because I don't pay for alcohol, but I do pay for the pizza. And we typically go to Stone Ground, and that's where I'm going to go. Is Stone Ground open tonight?
I'm sure
That's where I'm going to go tonight because I'm hungry. So for those of you who I see at Stone Ground this evening, you're welcome to come. For those of you who want to go to your partners or spouses or dogs or whatever, go do that. And hopefully you had a nice time. So thanks. That's